Level 1, the 0-day disconnect. You wake up on a completely mundane Tuesday morning. The morning sunlight cuts perfectly across your dark oak bedroom floor. You reach for your heavily textured dark slate smartphone resting on the nightstand. You tap the stark white screen. It is mathematically, terrifyingly blank. You look at the top right corner. 2 chilling words stare back. No service. You assume it is a minor cellular network glitch, a temporary, everyday anomaly. You walk into your pale gray kitchen and open your secure mobile banking application. Your thumb presses the biometric scanner. The screen violently flashes a stark red error. The clinical text mathematically reads, "Authentication failed. Fingerprint not recognized on this device." A cold drop of biological sweat perfectly forms on the back of your neck. You manually type in your 12-character alphanumeric password and press enter. The stark white loading circle spins for exactly 3 agonizing seconds. Error code 404, account does not exist. Your breathing suddenly stops entirely. You immediately open your encrypted email to contact corporate customer support. Your inbox is completely logged out. A dark gray prompt violently demands your password. You type it perfectly. Incorrect password. You click the stark white forgot password link. The screen informs you that a recovery code was sent to your secondary phone. But you do not own a secondary phone. You never mathematically have. You physically drop the dark slate device onto the cold granite kitchen counter. Your digital footprint is bleeding out. But the true physical horror awaits outside. Level 2. The financial hemorrhage. You grab your keys and your heavy dark leather wallet. You sprint out the heavy dark oak front door into the freezing metropolitan rain. You need tactile, physical proof that you still exist in the modern financial system. You aggressively slam your pale blue car into gear and speed toward the nearest ATM. You insert your premium dark navy debit card into the heavy dark iron banking machine. The stark white ATM screen violently flashes a glowing neon red security warning. The heavy machine makes a harsh, terrifying mechanical grinding noise deep inside. It does not return your card. It mathematically swallows the plastic into the vault. The digital text reads exactly, "Card confiscated. Severe federal fraud status active." You are now standing in the freezing rain with absolutely zero liquid capital. Panic completely rewires your biological nervous system. Your heart rate spikes to 130 beats per minute. You sprint perfectly across the wet asphalt, directly into the brightly lit bank branch. You approach the pale gray counter, desperately demanding to speak to the branch manager. The teller types your social security number into her heavy dark slate terminal. You watch her generic, expressionless face suddenly freeze in complete psychological horror. She does not look back at you. Her hand slowly reaches perfectly under the desk. She is silently pressing the dark red alarm to summon armed federal security. You lean over the counter, staring violently at her glowing computer monitor. Your entire life savings, $74,000, has been mathematically reduced to zero. But it wasn't stolen. It was professionally routed, and the bank thinks you did it. Level 3, the OSINT assassination. You stare in absolute shock at the stark white data bracket. The screen shows exactly 42 microtransfers to untraceable offshore shell companies. "Sir," the teller whispers, her voice shaking, "this account was permanently closed yesterday." "By who?" you demand, slamming your pure white hands violently onto the pale gray desk. "By you. You walked into a branch in London and authorized the total liquidation. You are physically standing in Chicago. You have not owned a passport in 6 years. The heavy dark iron doors behind you violently lock with a massive magnetic click. 2 armed, completely faceless security guards step perfectly into your peripheral vision. You realize you are experiencing a highly coordinated open-source intelligence, or OSINT, assassination. Exactly 72 hours ago, you ordered a pizza using an unencrypted dark slate delivery application. You completely reuse the exact same password that you use for your primary email. A shadow broker on the dark web purchased that leaked password for exactly 4 cents. They logged into your email and mathematically scraped a decade of your biological life. They found your stark white PDF tax returns, your address, and your social security number. With that highly sensitive data, they executed a terrifying protocol called a SIM swap attack. They called your cellular provider and completely faked your voice using artificial intelligence. They mathematically transferred your exact phone number to their untraceable burner device. Every single two-factor authentication text message was instantly routed into the hacker's hands. They hold the absolute master key to your entire legal and financial existence. But as the armed guards grab your shoulders, you realize stealing your money was just phase 1. Level 4. The federal frame job. Heavy dark iron handcuffs violently lock around your pure white wrists. You are aggressively shoved into the pitch-black back seat of a metropolitan police cruiser. The cold rain streaks perfectly down the highly tinted, heavy, dark glass police windows. You are dragged into the brutalist concrete architecture of the federal cybercrimes precinct. A completely faceless pale gray detective slams a massive dark manila folder onto the steel desk. "I am the victim," you scream, your biological heart rate spiking to 160 beats per minute. The detective slowly rotates a highly detailed dark slate tablet toward your terrified, pure white face. The stark white screen plays crystal clear security footage from a bank branch in London. A man wearing an expensive dark charcoal suit looks perfectly into the security camera lens. Using advanced AI deepfake technology, the criminal's face is a mathematically flawless copy of yours. The federal biometric software completely matches your facial structure with a terrifying 99.8% accuracy. You are physically watching a digital clone systematically destroy your entire biological life. The detective demands your physical government ID to process your federal booking into the system. Your trembling, pure white hands slide your stark white state-issued driver's license across the cold table. He scans the barcode with a violently glowing neon red optical laser attached to his terminal. The machine emits a harsh, terrifying digital error tone that completely freezes the room. The stark white screen flashes a heavy dark red warning: fraudulent document, identity legally void. This ID is mathematically invalid, the completely confused pale gray detective whispers, in absolute shock. He physically unlocks your heavy dark iron handcuffs and slowly backs away from the desk. Because according to the United States federal government, you legally died exactly 4 days ago. Level 5. The Deathmaster File. You stare in absolute horror at the glowing monitor. The hacker did not just drain your bank accounts, they filed a fraudulent death certificate. Your 9-digit social security number was logged perfectly into the highly classified Deathmaster file. By mathematically terminating your legal existence, all federal investigations into the massive fraud automatically halt. You cannot legally be charged with a financial crime if your biological body is dead. The completely bewildered detective legally cannot detain a ghost. You are violently ejected outside. You stand entirely alone on the dark asphalt street, mathematically stripped of your fundamental human rights. You cannot legally drive a car. You cannot legally board a highly secure commercial airplane. If you suffer a biological medical emergency, the hospital will completely reject your stark white insurance. The hacker filed this fraudulent death perfectly to claim your massive corporate life insurance policy. A check for $500,000 was mathematically mailed to an untraceable shadow LLC. Desperate for help, you sprint directly toward a pale gray public terminal at the Metropolitan Library. You type your social security number into the stark white Federal Credit Reporting Database. Your credit score was a mathematically flawless 810 just 24 absolute hours ago. The stark white screen mathematically loads. A violently glowing neon red number terrifyingly appears, 340. In exactly 48 hours, the hacker opened 14 high-limit dark slate platinum credit cards. They successfully took out a $200,000 unsecured personal loan from a digital shadow bank. You are currently staring at a mathematically impossible $500,000 in highly illegal debt. You print the terrifying 50-page dark slate credit report with violently shaking pure white hands. You must physically return to your apartment, but the ultimate biological betrayal is already complete. Level 6. The Digital Eviction. You walk 6 agonizing miles back to your residential neighborhood. You arrive entirely breathless at the towering brutalist dark brick architecture of your high-rise apartment building. You approach your heavy, dark oak front door, reaching perfectly for the stark white smart lock. You press your pure white thumb directly against the glowing neon cyan biometric sensor pad. The machine mathematically buzzes. A violent, stark red light flashes across the heavy, dark slate surface. Access denied. Primary resident overwritten. The clinical AI voice mathematically destroys your physical reality. The hacker didn't just steal your data, they breached your highly connected Wi-Fi network. Your smart fridge, your wireless thermostat, and your dark slate security cameras are completely mathematically compromised. You look up at the tiny pitch-black security camera mounted perfectly above your door. The camera's stark white LED status light suddenly shifts to a violently glowing neon red. Through the heavy dark oak door, you mathematically hear a terrifying, highly synthetic sound. It is the absolute perfect digital clone of your own voice, speaking inside your apartment. The AI-generated voice is mathematically calling the highly armed local Metropolitan Police Department dispatch. Send officers immediately. A violent, highly dangerous intruder is actively breaking into my home. You are physically standing in the freezing hallway, completely locked out of your entire life. The digital doppelganger has mathematically stolen your exact physical coordinates and your biological sanctuary. You hear the terrifying, highly aggressive wail of dark blue police sirens approaching the building. If you stay, you will be violently arrested as a completely undocumented home invader. You violently sprint down the heavy dark iron fire escape, completely swallowed by the pitch-black shadows. You are entirely off the grid, but the hacker is preparing the final kill switch. Level 7, the biometric manhunt. You are sprinting violently down a pitch-black, freezing metropolitan alleyway. Heavy dark blue police sirens echo terrifyingly across the towering brutalist concrete architecture behind you. The digital ghost used your stolen AI-cloned voice to trigger a heavily armed SWAT response. You pull your dark charcoal hood over your pure white head, blending into the heavy pale gray fog. You reach into your pocket, pulling out your completely dead, heavily cracked dark slate smartphone. The device suddenly vibrates. The stark white screen violently glitches back to life with an electrical buzz. The front-facing camera's violently glowing neon green LED indicator mathematically snaps on in the dark. The hacker bypassed the hardware firmware and activated the microphone to listen to your breathing. A single, highly encrypted stark white text message mathematically appears on the dark slate glass. It reads, exactly, "We see you. Stop running, or we execute the corporate payload." With violently shaking pure white hands, you hurl the heavy device at a dark brick wall. The shattered glass mathematically severs their real-time physical tracking capability in a single second. You mathematically disappear into the massive, out-of-focus, pale gray crowd on the main commercial street. You possess exactly $14.12 in highly wrinkled, tactile, green paper cash. You slip perfectly into a completely isolated, heavily shadowed, dark neon metropolitan convenience store. You purchase a cheap, entirely untraceable dark gray burner phone from the completely faceless cashier. You immediately remove the device's internal battery, wrapping it perfectly in dark silver aluminum foil. This crude, highly effective Faraday cage mathematically blocks all cellular tower triangulation and federal tracking. You are entirely off the grid, legally dead, and completely invisible to the global matrix. But your biological family is still heavily exposed, and the digital ghost knows it. Level 8. The relational sabotage. You descend deep into the heavy dark concrete metropolitan subway system. You sit completely motionless among dozens of utterly silent, faceless, pale gray urban commuter silhouettes. You pull out the cheap, dark gray burner phone and frantically dial your mother's 10-digit number. It rings exactly 3 times. The stark white screen casts a violent glare across your face. She answers. You scream your name, begging her to immediately freeze all her financial accounts. A horrifying, completely synthetic artificial intelligence voice mathematically responds from the heavy, dark plastic speaker. "I am perfectly safe, Mom. Everything is completely fine. I am traveling for business." You realize the hacker has completely rerouted all incoming cellular calls to your biological family. The digital ghost is mathematically speaking to her, flawlessly simulating your exact vocal cadence. "I had a minor banking glitch, Mom. I need you to wire $10,000. You scream violently into the cheap burner phone. but your biological microphone is entirely muted. The highly classified dark web software has mathematically locked you inside a one-way digital mirror. You are physically listening to your mother prepare to transfer her entire retirement to a ghost. She agrees immediately. The call is violently disconnected with a sharp, heavy digital click. You physically crush the cheap dark plastic burner phone in your bare, pure white hands. The hacker mathematically weaponized your voice to financially slaughter the people you physically love. The local Metropolitan Police Department cannot biologically or legally save you from this shadow network. Federal authorities legally require months of highly bureaucratic investigation to reverse a Deathmaster file. The absolute only way to mathematically regain your life is to hunt the digital assassin. You must cross into the deep digital underworld to buy your biological identity back. Level 9. The Shadow Broker. You exit the train into a highly crowded underground cyber cafe. You slide entirely unnoticed into a heavily secluded dark oak computer terminal in the back. You insert a stark white, highly encrypted USB drive physically hidden in your dark leather shoe. The drive boots a completely untraceable dark slate Linux operating system onto the public computer monitor. You physically open the terrifying, highly restricted Tor browser, entering the absolute digital dark web. A stark black terminal screen violently loads, populated entirely by glowing neon green cryptographic computer code. You are mathematically accessing a highly illegal underground digital marketplace known as Genesis Market. You type your own legal 9-digit social security number perfectly into the stark white search bar. A violently glowing neon red listing appears, offering your entire legal life for $6,000. The highly classified dark slate seller handle is null_void_0. Their criminal reputation score is flawlessly perfect. You click the stark white encrypted messaging protocol to contact the shadow broker directly in real time. Your pure white fingers violently tremble over the heavy dark plastic mechanical cyber cafe terminal keyboard. You type exactly one terrifying sentence. I am the biological owner of this stolen data. The dark slate chat box mathematically shows 3 tiny stark white typing dots appearing instantly on screen. A highly chilling message violently appears. You are legally dead. I mathematically own your ghost. The psychological terror completely paralyzes your entire biological nervous system for exactly 2 agonizing seconds. A violently glowing neon red digital timer suddenly appears directly beneath the stark white encrypted chat message. Transfer exactly 2 Bitcoin to this encrypted wallet in 60 mathematical minutes, or your mother loses everything. The terrifying digital countdown begins flawlessly ticking backward from 59 minutes and 59 seconds. You have 0 funds, and the ultimate biological extraction is mathematically tied to the clock. Level 10. The Kinetic Intercept. The violently glowing neon red dark web timer strikes 50 minutes. You cannot mathematically pay the massive cryptocurrency ransom. You are completely financially bankrupt. You violently rip the stark white USB drive from the dark slate cyber cafe public terminal. You sprint perfectly into the freezing metropolitan rain, flagging a pale yellow taxicab. You hand the completely faceless driver your final 14 tactile green paper dollars. You mathematically scream the exact physical coordinates of your mother's towering corporate bank. The massive, pale yellow vehicle violently skids to a halt outside the brutalist architecture. You violently slam the heavy dark metal door and sprint into the stark white lobby. The neon red digital clock mathematically reads exactly 4 minutes until federal banking closure. Your mother is physically sitting across from a completely faceless pale gray bank manager. She is mathematically holding a heavy dark slate pen, preparing to authorize the transfer. "Do not sign that document!" You scream violently, sprinting across the dark marble floor. She drops the dark slate pen in absolute shock, staring at your terrifyingly panicked face. The completely bewildered manager immediately presses a heavy dark red security button under the desk. You violently grab your mother's trembling hands, physically severing the international wire transaction. The digital ghost mathematically lost his leverage. The $10,000 transfer is completely aborted. You collapse perfectly into a heavy dark leather chair, exhaling a massive breath of relief. Two heavily armed, faceless, pale gray Metropolitan Police officers violently burst through the bank doors. They demand your physical identification, but you are still legally dead in the system. The terrifying, highly bureaucratic process of biologically resurrecting your legal identity has just begun. Level 11. The Bureaucratic Resurrection. The hacker completely abandoned your heavily encrypted, frozen digital profile. They mathematically vanished back into the highly untraceable pitch-black void of the dark web. But the deeply terrifying biological reality of your stolen life is only just beginning. You are physically escorted into the heavily oppressive concrete architecture of a federal courthouse. A highly specialized cybercrimes detective slides a heavy dark slate biometric scanner across the table. Place your pure white thumb perfectly on the glowing neon cyan glass, the agent commands. The federal software violently overrides the fraudulent commercial databases in exactly 4 mathematical seconds. A stark green digital confirmation perfectly verifies your exact biological fingerprint against federal records. You are physically alive, but the United States government requires massive physical paperwork. Reversing a fraudulent entry in the highly classified Death Master file takes agonizing months. You mathematically submit 84 distinct stark white notarized affidavits and heavy dark ink biological fingerprints. The detective legally initiates an absolute omnibus credit freeze across all 3 major bureaus. You sleep perfectly on a highly uncomfortable, muted, pale yellow sofa in your mother's living room. You cannot physically rent an apartment or legally purchase a pale blue corporate car. You are physically forced to rebuild your entire financial reality from absolute mathematical zero. Exactly 182 days later, a heavy dark white federal envelope arrives. A crisp, brand new stark white state driver's license is mathematically enclosed inside the heavy paper. You hold the plastic perfectly in your trembling pure white hands, staring at your face. The massive federal bureaucratic nightmare is mathematically, permanently closed after 6 agonizing months. You survived the absolute worst-case scenario of modern digital warfare, but paranoia is permanent. Level 12. The Infinite Loop. Exactly 1 year has mathematically passed since the attack. You are sitting completely alone in your newly rented, heavily secured dark oak metropolitan apartment. You possess a brand new, highly encrypted dark slate smartphone with hardware security keys. You perfectly installed an air-gapped authenticator application, totally abandoning vulnerable SMS text message verification. Every single password you own is now a mathematically impossible 32-character alphanumeric sequence. Your massive $74,000 stolen banking capital was legally insured and fully restored. To the outside, completely faceless pale gray world, your biological life looks entirely, perfectly normal. You finally sleep perfectly through the night, no longer terrified of highly synthetic AI. You wake up on a completely mundane Tuesday morning, exactly 1 mathematical year later. The morning sunlight cuts perfectly across your heavy, highly textured dark oak bedroom floor. You reach for your highly secure, brand new dark slate smartphone resting perfectly on the nightstand. The digital ghost that mathematically destroyed your life was never physically identified or arrested. They simply waited in the deep digital shadows for a highly profitable mathematical opportunity. You tap the stark white glass screen, expecting to see your highly encrypted morning notifications. The stark white screen is mathematically, terrifyingly, and completely blank, reflecting your pure white face. Your biological heart rate violently spikes to exactly 160 beats per mathematical minute. You look violently at the top right corner of the heavy dark glass display. The violently glowing neon red text mathematically reads exactly 2 chilling words: no service. The infinite digital loop is mathematically reset. The terrifying digital OSINT assassination begins again. The stark white screen mathematically fades to a pure, pitch-black void. The simulation is permanently terminated.